on a different kind of area of where you're going to be working in is the budget. And I think that there's a pretty provocative statement from your opponent, just that he says, and this is from the Tribune, he says, we need to make some hard choices now so that in 2012, which will probably be the worst year in the budgetary cycle, we'll be in a position to still provide essential services to our county. I mean, when you think of essential services and the things that, that implies, that we wouldn't have, that we would experience cuts to the courts or to the sheriff's department, to things like the administrative services, the clerks and collector and stuff like that. I mean, do you agree with that assessment, and do you think that something has to be done about the budget?
Well, it's been kind of hard to keep up with what Ed's been saying. He started out saying we have a $7 million deficit and we need to make hard cuts. This morning he was saying that it's not a matter that we need to make cuts, but we need to reallocate, and there's actually excess money there that could be used on things like giving money to the Humane Society or things like that. So I'm not really sure where Ed is at this point, but the fact is that 2012, anybody who looks at the budget can tell you that this is going to be a more expensive year, mainly because of the election costs. The county has to budget for the full costs of the primary and the general election. To what degree other governmental entities can put issues on the ballot at those elections, we can then share that cost out. We also have a hospital trustee election in April, and we have to budget as if that is going to be the borne by the county. Sometimes there's just one person that'll apply for that, so there's not an election. And then we also have these other primaries that are going on, usually a presidential primary. And unfortunately, fortunately, elections, especially under Wendy Norn here in Boone County, have done a great job of being efficient and being effective and being extremely accurate, and we're very confident in our voting system. Unfortunately, they're also much more expensive, things like the voting machines that are part of the requirements that we, I think from the federal level that we have, introduce huge amounts of costs. So you're talking like $1 million to conduct one of these elections. But once again, I think the fact that we have a conservative and low-risk budgeting process means that we're talking about a problem nearly 2 years in the future. We're not talking about how are we going to fund our salaries for the court system or the folks that work at the jail next week. And I think what Ed has proposed is really to do away with all these fund balances and cut things very close to the bone. And I think that that would be just way too of a high-risk situation that we want to get ourselves into.
I think that it was Karen Miller who talked about how the reason that the budget process, in fact, comes in lower than what is actually budgeted for is because you look at the numbers and then, things like that happen. The hospital trustee board, only has one person filing, and it's a matter of commissioners and people within the government being frugal, if that's how I understand how things work. Is that a correct reading of the situation?
Yeah, there's multiple reasons that you have things come under. First of all, if you have a large group of personnel, you're going to budget for, let's say you've got 100 employees. You're going to budget for the full salary and benefit costs of those 100 employees. During that year, though, you might have some people that leave, that go take another job, some people that retire. You might have some people that you have to fire or get rid of. You're going to have those positions vacant for some period of time. So maybe you only spend 97% of what you had actually budgeted for those 100 people. Now the question is, what do you budget next year? Are you going to budget that 95% of what it really costs on paper and then just hope that enough people leave during that year? Or do you budget 100%, which is the full anticipated costs of that a particular item? And I think that the county has done a good job. They have, let's say that if you're looking at equipment purchase, if we know that a dump truck costs $138,000 and we are able to get some joint purchasing with other counties or something this year and we get it for cheaper, then that comes in under budget for this year. But what we don't do is next year is just count on getting those types of deals next year. We look at what is the anticipated cost of a dump truck. It's about $138,000, and we budget for that. So what we don't do is we also don't penalize folks that don't spend their entire budget. So if the sheriff has a piece of equipment or something that costs $50,000 and he gets it for $45,000, we don't penalize him next year if he needs to buy another piece of equipment. and say, well, we're only going to give you $45,000, because that tends to get into what some people call spend it or lose it, where you have this idea that, well, I've got to spend my budget or I'm going to lose it. We also require that county officials come back to the commission for any sort of appropriation changes. So in that example I gave, let's say that the sheriff had some piece of equipment for $50,000, got it for less this year, wants to take that $5,000 saving and put it into a copier or something, some other piece of equipment. He has to come back to the commission, and we'll have that discussion as to whether we're going to allow that money to be spent on this other thing that he thinks he needs, or whether we're going to say, no, you're not going to, we're going to use that for next year to fund your budget for next year. So I think it is a very conservative process. It's a very low-risk process. And I think if you look at the fact that we haven't had to raise any we've had declining revenues for 4 years, no change in the tax levy for 4 years, and have still provided services to an increasing population, I think that that conservative approach has really paid off.
Just in general, I wonder if maybe one of the reasons that you don't hear a lot about the county commission is that maybe, possibly, this isn't, I don't know if this is true or not, that it's seen as not the place where new things are happening or where there's some sort of new development where you're proposing a new policy, some sort of way forward, but it's rather maintaining in a more efficient way the same services we've always had. And maybe that's seen as, by voters or by people who are in the county as like, well, that sheriff's department is going to be here in one form or another before J Scott Christianson is potentially elected, and after it'll still be there.
Right.
Do you think that maybe there's that misperception? And if you think there's that misperception, maybe you can correct it. Maybe there is some program that I don't know about.
Well, there's a basic issue that you're getting at there, and this is what we kind of call a statutory form of government. The duties that are allowed by the office holders as well as the commission, or the things that they can do, are spelled out in statute. So if we decided we wanted to regulate the size of rose bushes in Boone County, we can't do that without getting the General Assembly to give us the authority to do that. That can be difficult sometimes, because sometimes there are issues that come up in Boone County, and we have to lobby the General Assembly to get those things passed so that we can deal with our particular issues here. It does slow down the process. Sometimes slowing down the process is a good thing in government. That's okay. But it is one where we're not really that kind of legislative body the way a city is, and that's what cities are for. They're for those types of things that we watch in the city council here. So I think that's probably one issue. I think it also, we have some office holders that are very professional, are very well known in their field, like Wendy Noren, and Pat Linsmeyer, the collector, folks that have been there for a good amount of time, but have also are very professional, so you don't have the kind of bickering and arguing that goes on in other counties. And I think that there are sometimes disagreements, or as some people have told me, it gets noisy, which I think that means they yell at each other sometimes. But it may get a little noisy down there, but I think it's a way that we have a check and balance. The independent office holders do have kind of a check and balance on the commission, so they don't have to worry about their job if the treasurer wants to come forward and say that there's a problem with something that the commission's doing. So I do think we should be proud of our county government.
One last question, I guess two, they both kind of go hand in hand. One is that you've kind of gone after Ed Robb in this campaign. You've said, at certain points, you said things like, we don't need a campaign that's based on meaningless slogans, kind of referring to, things that he said about health care and sort of broader national issues that I think he sees as more connected, especially particularly like with health care costs and how they would be connected to healthcare costs at the county level. And I'm wondering if you see that connection, or if you think that just is sort of a little bit too extraneous to bring into the campaign.
Well, certainly there's going to be issues down the line, and we're going to deal with those cards as we're dealt them. But to predict that there's only bad things coming down the road, just doesn't reflect what I'm seeing. I mean, we have been through some tough times, and believe me, as a business owner, I've been keenly aware of that. But when you start to look at the level of cooperation that we have between all levels of government in Boone County, all the different municipalities, not just Columbia, but all the other municipalities and folks that are working hard to build a community that can prosper in the future. And I think that it's just too distracting to be casting stones and saying we have an appalling budget process and the stormwater program is horrific and the county clerk really only works during elections and halftime. I mean, I just don't think that pointing the finger and casting blame is a way that you're going to get anything done. And, I'm a very goal-oriented person in my business and my personal life, and I, set a target and I just work hard toward that, and I think that's what we got to do. There's going to be bumps along the way, but we can't, that's just part of life.
Mm-hmm. You're a first-timer in political office, but you're running for an office that is, I think a lot of people would perceive as very highly technical. It's obviously, like I don't really understand what the county commissioner does, but I have a feeling that it probably involves a lot of nitty gritty. And I wonder if you as a first timer feel that you're prepared to handle a job that many people would perceive as so technical.
Well, actually, that's one of the reasons I got into it. Was I actually, before I decided to run, my wife had kind of encouraged me to look at it, and I sat down with all the office holders for basically spent a week talking with the office holders, checking to make sure I understood not only what the county commission did, but how those other office holders view their interaction with the county commission and what their office did. And it is a very deliberative job. It's one that requires a lot of detail-oriented work. And from my business and the way I operate, I think that would be a perfect fit for me. I mean, I just have a lot of experience leading a team, creating a shared vision, trying to challenge people to improve the system. And I think that's a place where I can be a force that'll help Boone County move forward.
Okay. Scott Christianson running for Boone County Presiding Commissioner. Thank you.
Well, thank you.